What's happening, everybody? Tuesday night, we've got a 12-game slate, some weather situations to talk about, and then, of course, 12 games, lots of pitchers to hit on, some chalk options, lots of stacks to talk about, and Eric Lindquist and I, we've got you guys covered here. So do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, I want to shout out, I don't know if you've seen this on Twitter as of late, Eric, but just an influx of winning screenshots. We've been seeing these left and right coming into us. So you guys could see here that we had, Marcus something. Well, either way,
Marcus Aurelius. Are you kidding me? Marcus Aurelius from Gladiator. Come on.
The text is too small for me to read. I could just see Marcus, and then I can't exactly make out what it says after that. But anyway, what I can see is that he won $43,000, and he shouted out the Stokastic Hall of Fame. And yeah, we've been seeing these daily coming in from people using the Sims tools. I didn't win $43,000 last night, Eric, but I did win $7,000. I was pretty happy with that. I came in top 10 in the $5. I ended up winning a bunch of the 20 max GPPs yesterday. So yeah, it was a good day for the data and the Sims yesterday. And if you guys have not gotten on board yet, links down below in the YouTube description box. You can sign up for any of the packages that we have here at Stokastic, or you can take advantage of our link join program and sign up with one of our affiliate partners. For each one of them you sign up at, you're going to get one free month of the Stokastic Sim. So take advantage of those offers. It has been a good year for MLB DFS, Eric, and yeah, pretty regularly we're seeing the Stokastic avatar at the top of GPPs. And let's run it back and try to make it happen once again today. If you guys are a sub and you've got questions for me, tag me in the Discord channel so I see them. But other than that, Eric, how are you feeling about tonight's 12-game slate?
I feel good at the moment. Looks like it's going to be pretty good here with Chicago. So that makes me feel a little bit better. We'll get into the ins and outs of that one. Obviously, wind slightly blowing out there at Wrigley, although even 5 miles per hour, 8 miles per hour can make a major difference in that ballpark. I really think pitching yesterday exceeded my wildest imagination of what you could potentially see between the Giolito. I mean, everybody went nuts. Every pitcher went nuts yesterday. And now we've got some chalk and some interesting guys, and I'm going to try to mix in on the cheap end. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting slate for pitching. And you guys see I ran the Sims here on the screen. So I'll favor the top 150 lineups by the 5-man stacks I've filtered. And we'll look at the pitcher exposures and 2 real pieces of chalk. Will Warren, Brian Wu, they're both coming in at right around 40% ownership, 39% for Will Warren. You got 41% for Brian Wu. So you got a chalk pay-up option. You've got a chalk value option for the slate. So we're going to be covering all of that here. And I also want to ask, as we go through, trying to find like some potential pivots, because I actually do think the chalk is pretty warranted for tonight's slate. No pun intended with Will Warren being on the slate. But I do think there are some interesting spots that we can maybe find leverage or pivot a little bit. But let's look at all the pay-up options, 9K plus to begin. And we'll start with the chalk option here in Brian Wu at $9,500 at home against the Boston Red Sox. And like you said, just about every pitcher was good last night. Like anybody who you considered was probably pretty good. Like Logan Gilbert, even limited pitches, he ended up going, like 82 pitches, dominated the Red Sox. Lucas Giolito on the other side, dominated the Mariners. So I want to know, what do you make of Brian Wu tonight against a now weaker Boston Red Sox lineup? There's no Rafael Devers. Wu pulling 41% ownership. Do you think that mark is warranted?
Yeah, I do. He's not really somebody I'm going to make some crazy stance with. 3.60 xFIP on the season. The ground ball percentage is sub 40%, but it doesn't really matter all that much here in Seattle. You brought up the fact that Devers isn't in there to, potentially cause any kind of pain. I don't really see any reason that Brian Wu shouldn't be on your radar. Now, the strikeout stuff is a conversation because 23.9% K rate against righties, 20.2% against lefties on the season. I've brought this up multiple times with this current iteration of the Red Sox. I feel like every single show, I'm a broken record with it. There are so many more strikeouts available now than what there were at other points in time throughout this season, especially, Rafaela getting sent to the 9-hole routinely against lefties even. Roman Anthony is going to be somebody that I think strikes out probably less than most of the guys in the lineup that we've got currently going, but everybody's north of that 23% number where it just gets to be really, really good to be a pitcher on the other side. I gotta think that Brian Wu is pretty darn warranted at this number. I'm just basically holding hands with the field and moving along.
Yeah, so for me also, just bring this up at the top. It's the easy decision you'll make today if you're playing on DraftKings. Brian Wu, Will Warren, and cash. Bang, you're done. Easy,
done.
easy. Super simple start to your cash game lineup. Yeah, if you look at the data from the Sims here, Brian Wu showing up in 40% of lineups. We got him projected for 41% ownership. As far as the Sims that I've run, I'm maybe a little bit higher on the chalk pitchers and potentially getting a little bit more contrarian at offense, but overall, like nothing crazy. I ended up getting to 50% of Brian Wu, so like a couple more lineups, nothing really all that different. I guess my main point here is that if I had to make a decision to be over or underweight to the field on Brian Wu, my preference would be overweight as opposed to underweight, but it's high ownership. It's a big slate. You could go in other directions. It's more or less warranted in my opinion, but even if I want to go overweight, it wouldn't be anything crazy when it comes to Brian Wu. If you're picking one pitcher to pay up for and be different with, so if you were pivoting off of Brian Wu, would you go to a 21% on Robbie Ray, or is there somebody else who's standing out to you as a pay up option to get to?
Yeah, it'd be 21% Robbie Ray. And I also think Andrew Abbott's interesting. And there's just no way that my Minnesota Twins are, I mean, we're just striking out a ton, 27% K rate there. And I think he's a little bit underowned. But if you're telling me I can only play one of the two of them, Robbie Ray is definitely the guy that I'm the most interested in. I do find it interesting. His 6.5K prop has come down throughout the day. I ended up pulling the trigger at plus 110 earlier, and that was actually FanDuel. It wasn't even like at one of the exchanges. So like there are just so many different ways that Robbie Ray walks into upside here against a Cleveland team that just, yeah, they avoid strikeouts at the top half of the lineup, but even with David Fry there, he's been one of the worst hitters in baseball as he's gotten acclimated here. I expect positive regression for him, but 122 expected batting average, 234 xWOBA, not nearly the same strikeout immune stuff as normal. 46.2% to start off his season. That's going to come down for sure. But, even without Kyle Manzardo in there, it's still pretty darn good. It looks pretty good for him in this spot. You're getting the best ballpark to pitch in San Francisco. Not sure what else I can add.
Yeah, and when it comes to Robbie Ray, he's overall pitched really well this season. I'm pretty sure it was his last start where you and I weren't liking him, but it was because he was super chalk pitching in Coors Field. Yeah, totally different situation here, taking on the Cleveland Guardians. But still, you look at Robbie Ray's numbers overall for the year, 2.55 ERA now, 2.83 expected ERA. He's got a 28% strikeout rate. So he's been quite a bit better this year than he's been the last couple of seasons. It's actually as good as he's been since it wasn't a deserving Cy Young winner year that he had just because he had so much good luck go his way. But it doesn't mean he was bad that year or anything like that. And this is as well as he's pitched since that season. So Robbie Ray, I think that if we're looking at a pay up option to get to isn't Brian Wu, he makes the most sense to me. He is the third most rostered pitcher on the entire slate. So it's not like you and I are going out on any kind of crazy limb or anything like that by bringing up Robbie Ray. But I do think he looks a little bit underowned at 21% ownership. Now, that aside, is there a contrarian option who you like paying up for? And by the way, no is a reasonable answer here.
No, the answer is yes. I like Andrew Abbott. 5.5 plus money on the over. I'm not sure why it's that low. You get a Minnesota lineup that, again, just kind of plugged into the system here as a Twins fan. I think Willie Castro's interesting as a contrarian option. I think Ryan Jeffers and some of these Twins just look interesting because these price tags are so low. Byron Buxton, the only expensive bat in that lineup, but like there's still a massive upside despite how scary this ballpark is. Minnesota, 26.7% K rate against lefties on the season. I mean, we're talking top 5 in baseball in terms of striking out. They strike out even more here of late. They've been slumping pretty hard. Obviously, this is a phenomenal ballpark to walk into. But with Willie Castro up there batting third now, he is feast or famine. He's still around a 25% K rate guy. Harrison Bader, Jonah Bride, also tons of strikeouts at the bottom half of the order there. If he can get something out of the Correa France and Brooks Lee, who's actually been pretty in fuego for the Twins lately, if he can get something out of the middle portion of that order, I think Andrew Abbott, he's so good at avoiding the long ball despite being a fly ball pitcher. And there's just a lot of upside, I think, going his direction. Do I expect a complete game shutout like we saw against Cleveland? No, I don't. But 110 pitches his last two. I mean, we're talking crazy upside, and nobody's clicking on it because it's 10K against a righty-heavy Minnesota squad. So I get it. I get why his ownership's where it is, but I'm going to be double digits for sure.
So there are a couple of guys I like to get to differentiate lineups. It's not at the high end, though. I don't really like that many high-end pitchers, mostly because, and if you look at our projections here as well, we just don't have any of them projected all that well, at least, relative to what their price tags are. So you got like David Peterson projected for 14 fantasy points, Schwellenbach 16, Andrew Abbott 15. There are guys who are $2,000-$3,000 less expensive who we have comparably projected. So if somebody was going to take a shot on one of these guys who's like 3, 4, 5% owned, I'm not going to say it's unreasonable. It's just not the direction I prefer to get to be contrarian. So overall on the high end for me, I like Brian Wu. I think Robbie Ray is a little bit underowned, but otherwise I like going a little bit cheaper to get to some of my pitcher exposures. And when we get to the next price range of pitcher, let's just look at the 8K range for now before we get to the 7K pitchers. In the 8K range, we've got just 3 pitchers, Shane Smith, Chris Bassett, and then Chad Patrick. Do you like any of these guys? Because it's kind of a dead range for me personally.
Yep, dead range. I can't imagine. Like I said, Chicago weather looks all right, and so we don't have to think about it from that perspective. But even though Chad Patrick does have good stuff, like the stuff plus is pretty solid on him overall, but I don't love a fly ball pitcher with some fly ball bats and strikeout immune bats at the top of the Chicago order. I'm probably going to end up pulling the trigger on his under 4.5 strikeouts before it's all said and done. Haven't yet. But Chad Patrick, definitely not. Yeah, it's just a completely dead range for me. I'm going to be going a lot cheaper. And obviously, we talked Wu, we talked Ray. I think they're pulling appropriate ownership. And then this 7K range has the massive chalk of the slate, who's your first cash game pitcher in Will Warren, and some other guys that we can take shots on. But Bassett gives up too much power to lefties. Shane Smith, weather in St. Louis really doesn't strike out. And Chad Patrick, really difficult spot against the Cubbies. I think it's a complete pass on the 8K range.
Yeah, so this is where the slate kind of gets weird to me because from like $9,500 down into the 7K range, there just aren't really guys that I like until you get down to Will Warren. Like I said, there are some other cheap guys we'll talk about I like a little bit as well. But let's have the same conversation with Will Warren that we did about Brian Wu. Obviously, great matchup at home against the Los Angeles Angels. Tons of strikeouts to be had there. But Will Warren's 40% owned in the same way that Brian Wu is. So what do you make of Will Warren relative to his ownership? Do you think that number is too low, too high, or just about right?
Too low. It's too low. He has a 32% K rate against righties. And every time you face the Angels and every time you face the Astros, the first thing I do is I look at what is your strikeout rate against righties. 32% for Will Warren. I don't see a planet where I don't love this guy today. And you just have Luis Renifo and Nolan Schanuel. Again, I'm not expecting the Schanuel strikeout. That would just be a bonus. He's not exactly bad against lefties, 26% K rate, but like the strikeout stuff is so good. Do I think there's a chance that a leverage stack for the Angels is viable the same way that we talked about it to some extent yesterday? Yes, I do. I'm actually more interested because of the hard contact that Will Warren can give up in a small ballpark, but man, does his strikeout stuff look ridiculous for this spot, Greg.
Yeah, he is the pitcher I have the most exposure to by a pretty wide margin. Like I said, I came in a little bit overweight to the field on Brian Wu and the Sims run I did. Not anything crazy, but did get to him in half my lineups. Will Warren ended up in 2/3 of my lineups in the initial run that I did there. And, still some lineups to come out, some ownership updates, but I don't think it's going to change anything on Will Warren or Brian Wu. Just some of the stacks might change a little bit depending on what the starting lineups are. But for Will Warren, I don't understand why he's $7,500 on DraftKings. The salary just doesn't really make any sense. I know he's had some starts as of late that haven't gone quite as well, but you're talking about him pitching like in Los Angeles against the Dodgers. Yeah, that's not going to go as well as some of his other recent starts. He's made, so here's his last 4 starts. In Coors Field, at the Dodgers, against the Red Sox, which, he pitched okay in that start, but also not the easiest matchup in the world. And also on the road in KC, where he had 4 strikeouts, 1 walk, no runs allowed. But KC also a team that's kind of hard to generate strikeouts against. So it's like, we're just writing him off in the pricing algorithm because he got hit around by the Dodgers. Because even the matchup against the Rockies, he was okay. The matchup against the Red Sox, he was okay. Struggled with command a little bit. Didn't give up any runs against the Royals. So I don't understand why his salary is just plummeted, because he was, if I'm not mistaken, like 9K plus and all that long ago. He's in a good matchup, and he's just woefully underpriced a good strikeout pitcher. He's the best play on the slate, in my opinion.
Yeah, not only that, but like, despite the Angels having some ISO, 176 ISO against righties, the Angels 7.6% walk rate. I mean, that's so good for Will Warren, who kind of got bit by some walk bugs lately. 4-4 against the Dodgers and Boston. If you take walks off the table, 10.5% walk rate, that's too high for Will Warren. But if he's going to be going up against this team where it's Shanuel and Trout, the only 2 guys who walk above like a 9% clip, you're in such good shape backing Will Warren as long as he's not giving up 2-3 long balls. I feel very confident in him being the guy that you should have the most exposure to of any pitcher on the slate. He's just point per dollar, and in terms of what the upside is, it's just a ridiculous combination.
Yeah. So, like I said, overall, to me, the best option on the slate. I do see the super chat that we got from SitYTS. It's a FanDuel related question, so we'll touch on that as soon as we get over to FanDuel. And then Malukar also asked best stack in a single entry versus EMAC on FanDuel. All right, so he wants to know a stack specifically for EMAC. All right, that's an interesting angle right there. So yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to stacks as well. Thank you guys both for the super chat there. But now the other part of this is, who are the pitchers that you like, if any, in the 7K range who are pulling less ownership today?
Oh God. I'm probably with you. I think there's a number of guys that we can take shots on. First one's Matthew Liberatore. I get a little bit freaked out because he does have, he gives up a lot of fly ball contact against righties. It's just been a little bit freaky looking at some of the flips, and you look at this specific lineup, Miguel Vargas, he just hits launching pads. I think this might be an actual bet for me later on here tonight as well, going up against Matthew Liberatore. But is there enough strikeout stuff to justify it? I'm not sure. But anytime you get to face the White Sox, there's Luis Robert up in the 5-hole, Togman, Sosa, Michael A. Taylor is always great to see in that lineup because he strikes out a metric ton. I think there's enough to try to take some shots, plus sub 3.8 xFIP against both sides. I kind of like what I'm looking at with Liberatore, but do I like it that much? Probably not. It has more to do with the matchup. And then Ben Brown is another guy that, if you're using our data today, 13.5% his ownership's coming in at. I think there's a case for getting to a little bit more. Now, it's scary with the wind blowing out slightly and obviously the weather that's hanging out there, but Ben Brown has a K rate, man, 26.8% on the season. He gives up hard contact, but if you can get by Yelich, if you can get by, even a little bit, Jackson Churia, like, there are strikeouts available to you in this lineup. I think he's worth double-digit exposure. Currently I have 12% of him, so I'm just under, but like, he's definitely somebody that I think is a well-warranted target in the 7K range.
Yeah, the weather is dicey in Chicago, and there's also 2 Chicago games because both the Cubs and the White Sox are at home today. So, it's a similar concern for both of those games. The one thing that does make me feel slightly better about it is, even though there's a 50% chance of rain, it's not until like 9 p.m. Eastern time. So we're not talking about until kind of the later stages of that game anyway. So there's a scenario where weather impacts the game, but it's not until the pitchers would be done anyway. So as things stand right now, I'm willing to take chances on pitching in those games, and more specifically with Ben Brown, because he's a tough one. The way that I approach him is, if he's popular, I probably want to stack against him. If he is contrarian, I probably want to play him because he's not good. He's got a 5.71 ERA and a 4.47 expected ERA. But like you said, he's got a strikeout rate, 27% strikeout rate this year, 29% strikeout rate last year. The guy could generate swing and misses. he's just one of the hardest guys to pin down in MLB DFS because he's legitimately not a good real life player. He's just a pitcher who is capable of getting swing and misses. So when he has an okay start for a real life perspective, it's probably going to be really good for DFS just because the only way he's able to get outs is usually from those strikeouts. So I like Ben Brown for GPPs, but once again, it carries a lot of risk because he sucks. And then on top of him also not being good, there's some weather concerns, but I'm willing to take the chance on him right now.
Yeah, 405 BABIP against lefties. I mean, there's going to be some positive regression for Ben Brown. Otherwise, he's just going to be dead and out of the league. So there's that. What made you smile? I hate when you smile.
Oh, nothing. I was just reading a message.
From whom?
From Twitter. So I have been arguing with people on Twitter the entire day.
That's why you're so happy.
Oh my God, I'm so happy. So it's really the dumbest thing ever. But have you been following the story about the kid who has the $13 parlay?
No. Oh, is it the one that's like the one with OKC and Edmonton? Is that the one?
Yeah. So basically he bet all of the winners of championships for like the last year. And now he's down to just Edmonton and OKC. OKC looks pretty good. Edmonton, pretty dicey. But anyway, he had pretty significant cash out offers. And people have gotten very upset online that he hasn't cashed out to the point where all of the internet is rooting for him to lose because he didn't cash out his bet. And I've just been arguing with people about it on Twitter today, and I can't not look at the messages. But anyway, people like, this kid's a moron for not cashing out his bet. Therefore, we're going to root for the sportsbooks and DraftKings to win this bet. And I've just been arguing with people about it today. People are dumb.
So is the answer. People are dumb.
Oh, by the way, also a side thing, because I want to shout this out. Jameson Bonner in chat said, Greg, did you do a late swap yesterday? This was probably last night the most significant MLB late swap slate that I can remember, because the Houston Astros, a team who looked absolutely great in our data yesterday, they ended up putting out a shitty lineup, and one that we were not expecting. Didn't come out until after lock. There was no Yadier Diaz, who I thought was by far the best catching option on the slate. They also had Luis Guillorme was in the lineup, and it was
Mauricio Dubuon playing third instead of Paredes, who DH'd. Yeah, it was stupid. It was a terrible lineup.
So anyway, a big part of me finding success on the DFS slate yesterday was running my lineups to the MLB late swap tool, which obviously we're using just about every single slate for NBA. I rarely have to use it for MLB, but every once in a while you get a situation like last night where there's a super chalky stack and the lineup comes out way different than expected post-lock. And then you're in a situation where I was playing 150 lineups last night. I was not able to hand change that. Like, I had Yadier Diaz in, like, I don't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere between 20 and 30% of my lineups. And then all of a sudden he isn't in the lineup. So yeah, I had to run all of my stuff through the late swap tool. And I don't know exactly which lineups changed, which lineups didn't change, but based on some of the changes, like I got to the biggest change in my lineups, other than just the Houston players coming out, the late swap tool put me on a lot of Lucas Giolito post-lock, which ended up being huge for last night's slate. So yeah, shout out to the MLB late swap tool that we have here, because I definitely wouldn't. My best lineup had Giolito in it, so I assume that was a lineup I wouldn't have otherwise had.
No, it ended up being a very necessary part of yesterday. I mean, Isaac Paredes, you and I were texting a little bit on the side like we normally do. Normally it's about nice things, but this one was about baseball, so there are that too. But Isaac Paredes was the best play on the slate yesterday. He was under-owned across the board because he was never in anybody's projected lineup. He also had the dreaded DTD next to his name over on DraftKings, which I think kept some people off pre-game for it. But once you got to lock and he was not in, or he was in that lineup and Yadier Diaz was not, you had a pretty sizable edge getting to, both Caratini, I think, was still in the projected, but like it ended up being a great slate overall. And yeah, Giolito, somebody I had zero of. I got a little bit of when it was all said and done, just by necessity. And yeah, shout out the late swap tool.
Yeah. So anyway, getting back to some of the pitching here, I like Ben Brown. We'll keep an eye on the weather there. You had shouted out Matthew Liberatore as somebody to potentially look at. He's got a great matchup against the Chicago White Sox. So, whenever you get a low-owned pitcher against the White Sox, that's probably going to be something of interest. Liberatore, he's not great, but he's not terrible either. He's 4% owned. I think he's definitely somebody who's worth taking some shots on. Anything else you want to talk about in the 7K range?
No. Do you have any interest in Slade Ciccone pitching in San Francisco?
I do not. Just it's hard for me to get behind Slade Ciccone. I do have a little bit of interest in Walker Buehler though, just because he's showing up in the Sims and he's got a little bit of upside. Like we've seen a couple of decent starts out of him lately, 7 innings, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk in his last outing, 2 outings ago, which was on the road. He's had a brutal stretch of matchups as of late, and he's still put up some decent performances and his salary hasn't really moved. So at 7K in Seattle, I think he's worthwhile at 12%. But if I'm going to go contrarian, I prefer Ben Brown. But Walker Buehler, who you and I have mostly shit on this year, 7 innings, 7 strikeouts against a really chalky Tampa Bay Rays offense his last time out. He got hit around by the Yankees to start before that, but it was a tough matchup against the Yankees. Before that, he had to pitch in Atlanta against the Braves. But yeah, we've seen a few decent starts out of him. I'm okay taking shots on him at 7K. I don't love him or anything like that, but I think he's viable.
Yeah, it was good pitching weather for that outing specifically, and now it's a great ballpark. So you can kind of make the same case where, yeah, something is really going in his direction that's positive. The thing that's not is the power he's giving up to righties. I mean, he's just giving up crazy power to righties. So I think one of my favorite contrarian pieces on this slate is getting to the Julio Rodriguez, Randy Arozarena, Cal Raleigh trio. Now, obviously, Raleigh will be from the left side against him, but I just really like that combination with the 2 righties. And I don't think people realize Randy Arozarena can steal some bags too. So I think that 14 stolen bases, that was even more than I thought when I was pulling up Randy Arozarena just now. 14 stolen bags, that's a real number for Randy Arozarena and the 5 holes. So lots of ways where I think Seattle can get after Walker Buehler, but overall I'm with you. I think Buehler is kind of an interesting pitching option.
Yeah, so 7K range, Ben Brown, I agree with you. I think Liberatore draws a little bit of interest and is worthwhile. Anybody sub 7K that you're looking to potentially take a punt on?
Yeah, let's fucking ruin all equity that I have with the people as I talk to you about Jack Leiter. Jack Leiter is one of the best pitching prospects we've had in forever. Last year, it was very bad. Very, very bad. Came off of Tommy John surgery, and it was very, very bad. But there were a lot of people, and I mean, this has been something that's been on Reddit. It's been kind of everywhere for the last couple of weeks. And I don't think he was on a main slate last week, or maybe just not a show that I was on, but he's been tipping his pitches. That's a thing that he kind of came to grips with, that people were seeing through his glove or something. And so he got a new glove made, and it's a terrible strikeout matchup. It is 4.5 strikeouts plus money to the over. So maybe just go and bet it with me, because that's the first thing that I did when it got to plus 125. But if you made me play a sub 7K pitcher on this slate, I absolutely will not click on this version of Brandon Pfaadt against Toronto. There's just no upside there. JP Sears against Houston, platoon everybody against him. It's not going to look good. Dean Kramer's kind of interesting with some of the changes that have gone to his mix. We can talk about him as well, but I think the most interesting by far to me is Jack Leiter, because I do think we're going to see some massive strikeout upsides from him going forward. He's already got some of the best stuff in baseball. The location has been a problem, and him locating is a major problem along with tipping pitches. But otherwise, he could end up being, I'm not going to say he's Paul Skeens, because that's, obviously they're both the most 2 highly touted pitchers we've had in forever out of college, one out of Vanderbilt, and then obviously LSU for Paul Skeens. But I think Jack Leiter just has that kind of stuff that I keep watching it, and it's getting better. And then my Twins hit him up last time out, and I didn't really like that, but they were talking nonstop on the telecast. If Jack Leiter's not tipping his pitches anymore, maybe he's going to be much improved. And I do feel that way about him for sure.
I got a couple lineups with him through the sim. So if you're going to take a shot on a pitcher sub 7K, I do think he's the best one. But ultimately, it's kind of none of these guys for me. If somebody, I do like to bring up this point of view as well. So if you're playing 150 lineups, 20 lineups, you just needed to get some extra exposure to pitchers and you're looking for somebody sub 7K. Yeah, I think Jack Leiter is the guy. But for most of our audience who's playing, like 1, 2, 3 lineups, I wouldn't consider Jack Leiter in that scenario. There's nothing that's overly interesting to me. Sub 7K. I do agree with you overall on the stuff of Jack Leiter. Average fastball velocity, 98 miles per hour this year. He's not generating strikeouts in the minor leagues. He wasn't particularly good, but the one thing he did do is get strikeouts in the minor leagues. 2024 in AAA, 33% K rate. 2023 in the minor leagues, 31% K rate. So he's a guy who we do know has really good stuff. There's a reason he was a top-end pitching prospect, just hasn't been able to put it together. But who knows? Maybe can you remember a pitcher who I'm trying to remember, because I know we've seen it before, but I'm trying to recall an example where we heard about a pitcher tipping his pitches, it became public, and they were able to correct it, and they became much better. I'm sure there are ones. I just can't think of any examples right now. But
Luzardo,
maybe
the last 2 weeks. Jesus Luzardo, that was a big Philly media was going nuts about Jesus Luzardo because he just went from absolutely eviscerating everyone to getting eviscerated for 2 starts to going back to eviscerating things. And again, I responded in the chat there, but I read a lot about this over the course of the last couple of days because, I heard about it the first time he pitched against the Twins, and I was like, oh shit, Jack Leiter was tipping pitches, and that was like a big deal. And then we got after him a little bit, but like it was kind of one of those spots where, take it, leave it, whatever. Target field, it was pretty hitter friendly in that situation, but you have Jack Leiter, where apparently the way that he grips the ball in his glove, you could tell which pitch was going to be coming. And if you know which pitch is going to be coming, the guessing game is over. You as the hitter just basically set up for that pitch and know kind of where the mapping is going to go for that pitch. And you just kind of plan ahead of time where you're going to be swinging. You're swinging to a zone rather than, trying to identify it. And so it's a really cool deal. Just Google it. It's the first thing that comes up in the Google machine, and spent a fair bit of time talking about it last night on Lindy's. So hopefully you enjoy it. But Jack Leiter, he's about the only guy sub 7K that I want to take any shots on.
Anything that we've not touched on yet at pitcher that you want to bring up before we look at the FanDuel side of things, then also tie this to some of the super chats that we've gotten?
David Festa, last guy to bring up. He's coming up a little bit in the Sims, but nothing crazy for me.
All right. So over on FanDuel, the first thing I want to do is answer the question that we got from GFY Fantasy. I swear his name was something different when I read off this question before. But anyway, sleeper pitcher, I could just be completely misremembering. But anyway, he wants to know sleeper pitcher for the slate on FanDuel, and then also a must-play first baseman. All right. So the first thing that we'll answer is the first part of his question, which is sleeper pitcher on FanDuel. So for the FanDuel side of things, I'm just going to refresh here. All right. So here's what we got for ownership. 25% ownership going to Will Warren, 22% ownership going to Brian Wu. Everybody else is contrarian. So here's, for all intents and purposes, answering his question. We're just going to take Will Warren and Brian Wu out of the FanDuel conversation. Everybody else is a sleeper. Who do you like playing at pitcher on FanDuel who is not Will Warren or Brian Wu in a GPP?
Oh, shit.
I've got my answer, by the way. You want me to go first?
Oh, it's got to be Robbie Ray.
I'm going to go Ben Brown at $8,500.
Oh, daddy.
5% ownership.
Wow. Love it. Do it.
But Robbie Ray is a viable option as well. He's going to put you on a different lineup build. He's $10,700, whereas the chalk options, Brian Woo's $9,300. Will Warren is $8,200. So by spending a little bit of extra money for Robbie Ray, you're getting yourself on not just a lower owned pitcher, but also into a spot where you're going to be forced on to hitters in a different price range compared to what people are going to be playing if they go to Will Warren or Brian Wu. But I think both those guys make sense. I think Robbie Ray makes sense. I think Ben Brown makes sense. Ben Brown priced right in between Will Warren and Brian Wu, but you're getting him at, pretty minimal ownership, a fifth of the ownership of those guys. So give me Ben Brown. I think Robbie Ray makes sense as well. And the other part of GFY Fantasy's question, who's your favorite overall first baseman to be rostering today?
What? That's a real question. I love that.
Yeah, he wants to know who the must like. there's never
Shohei
somebody.
Ohtani.
There's never somebody I'm going to look at as a must play at first base or any kind of particular position or anything like that. It's pretty rare that I have a ton of exposure to any individual player at a position, but I'll tell you somebody I'm getting a decent amount of in the Sims is Christian Walker. And I do wonder if the Houston Astros could be a team who, despite being in a pretty good spot, the field might be like, hey, they were chalk yesterday and were no good. I don't want to play them today. But I think this is just as good of a spot for Houston tonight as it was, maybe even better tonight than it was expected to be yesterday, because they're presumably going to be having their normal lineup out there. I like the matchup against JP Sears. So I think this is a good spot to go back to what might be slightly lower ownership than expected on the Astros just because they were chalk and didn't work out yesterday.
Yeah, their lineup was pure trashola yesterday. Thank you, though, because ended up on the A's money line. That was very necessary on an otherwise bad betting day for me. So I am grateful to you as we talked through that a little bit. But I am looking at, Christian Walker's number 2 before me behind Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani is first base outfield eligible. Not sure if that's cheating or not.
No, it's not. I think that's a reasonable answer there. By the way, the Astros are projected for the most ownership on the slate, so I'm not saying they're going to be contrarian or anything like that. I just wonder if maybe they come in a little bit lower owned than expected, just because they were chalky and dudded last night. Like, I couldn't believe some of the ownership on them. I know he homered, but like Jose Altuve in the $5 150 max contest, which had almost 50,000 entries, he was just over 30% owned. I was looking at that and thinking, well, that's a big number. That's a big number. If he ends up having a big game, that could be problematic. He did have the one homer, but it wasn't anything that made him a much roster sort of player or anything like that. But Malukar then says, best stack in a single entry versus EMAC on FanDuel. Is there a particular stack that you like more because it's against EMAC?
On FanDuel?
Yeah.
Take a look.
It's for EMAC.
It's for EMAC. It's specifically to torture EMAC. Dodgers on FanDuel are ridiculous against Randy Vasquez.
I agree with that, especially because the pitcher pricing and just the overall pricing is so much softer on FanDuel. You've got a matchup against Randy Vasquez. If you guys were watching the show that Eric and I did, I think it was on Friday, where we were looking at some of the wins above replacement of pitchers and trying to figure out who's going to be facing regression going forward. Randy Vasquez, big time red flags there. His underlying numbers are terrible. And if there's any spot that a pitcher should start to see some of those underlying numbers come to truth and be the reality, maybe against the top of that Los Angeles Dodgers lineup. So I agree with you. I think that the Dodgers are a great team to be stacking against Randy Vasquez. They're super expensive, but it's just not all that much of a concern on the FanDuel side of things. So I like the Dodgers as well. Malukar, go on. Beat EMAC tonight. Yeah, by the way, also, I like this. A little bit of try. I like when Malukar's got a little bit of an edge to him. Here's what he said. No worries. He's easy to beat. I like that. EMAC, we might have a new host for some of the weekend shows.
Look at this. We got a whole thing going on right here. This is a whole moment. That's a whole moment right there.
Malukar's gonna have his own show here. Shout out to Malukar. Love the
also known as the Christmas special that I'll still never forget from 4 years ago. Was that 4 or 5 years ago? Yeah, it was Christmas. It was special. Good stuff, Malukar.
Demetrius Mack earlier asked if we have a free trial for The Sims. We don't. We do for Portfolio EV for 7 days. The closest thing that we have to a free trial is our link join program. So The Sims are actually kind of expensive to run in the back end. So we can't do free trials readily for them because it would just cost a shit ton of money for us to do that because it is expensive to run the simulations and store all the data and all that. But we do have is our link join program, because if you guys sign up at one of these sports books, they pay us for it. So that's where we're able to set this up, where if you guys sign up at a sports book through one of our links down below in the YouTube description box, to go to that landing page, for each one you sign up for, we are able to give you 1 free month of a core Sims package for a single sport of your choosing. So Demetrius, take advantage of one of these. This is the best way to get your foot in the door. And then also you can take advantage of stuff like Fanatics does. Off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly what their offers, but a lot of different books have offers like this. But it's like you sign up at Fanatics to give you like 10 free or 7 free $100 bets. So not only are you going to be getting access to our Sims for free for a month, but also you're going to get stuff like free bonus bets and risk-free bets from a lot of these sites when you sign up. So if you're looking for a more affordable way to get your foot in the door and start building your DFS bankroll, take advantage of one of the sportsbook offers. We got pick'em sites in there. We got sportsbook sites. So there should be something that you've never signed up there that is relevant for you to take advantage of there. So check that out if you haven't already, Demetrius. Anything else you like at FanDuel Pitcher? Because in general, I think everything we talked about at DraftKings Pitcher is going to apply to FanDuel too.
Correct.
All right. Stacks then. Let's hit on some stacks and let's see from the Sims. Sims here, 5-man stacks, lots of Houston. Kind of similar to what it looked like when we were looking at the initial run of Sims that we got yesterday. We were on the show and before the lineups ended up coming out. But Houston Astros, they are the team pulling the most ownership in both FanDuel as well as DraftKings. I do think they're going to be quite popular in small field tournaments. I still think they're going to be the most popular team in large field tournaments, but perhaps maybe a little bit lower on than projected just because of what I had said before. What do you make of the Astros relative to their ownership?
I think they're all really good individual plays that I'm probably going to mix and match in a lot of lineups. I still have some 5-mans too. I mean, this might just be embracing a little bit of the chalk, and that's kind of the trend that the Sims tool is kind of having us embrace here. You look at the 5-stack exposure I get in my top 150, then the top 150, I'm assuming that you highlighted as well on the screen there. Mm-hmm. They're just so cheap. It's priced as though they're in Oakland and they're in Sacramento at a AAA ballpark. They're facing JP Sears, who I thought we were dealing with yesterday. It ends up being Mitch Spence. Mitch Spence, pretty serviceable, found ways to survive, and obviously not the best lineup there from Houston. But assuming we get the normal lineup here today, I mean, JP Sears, 20-degree launch angle off the bat for opposing batters in a AAA ballpark with advantageous weather, 43% hard hit, 466 expected slugging. It's so hard at these prices. I mean, Christian Walker, one of the hottest hitters in baseball, is 3,400. I mean, it's just brutality. I don't know what you're supposed to do other than play a lot of these guys today. Now, are there ways of having those lineups still getting a little bit different? Yeah, they're 5 players in a 5-man stack. They're, 3 or 2 that you're looking at in secondary stacks. And there's lots of ways of mixing, matching, and the Sims tool is kind of helping me out with that for sure. But assuming we get the A lineup, I'm just going to be firing them up in bulk. They're going to be my highest owned stack in large field.
I don't have any issue with that at all. I'm getting to a good amount of them, not quite the 34% mark, but definitely do think it's a team worth getting to. For single entry, my favorite team to be playing, though, Eric, is who they're going up against. I was about to say the Oakland Athletics, but they're not the Oakland Athletics. They're not the Sacramento Athletics, even though they play in Sacramento. They are the Athletics, though. They are going to be facing Jason Alexander, who obviously is famous for his work on Seinfeld. And, these are the kinds of pitchers you want to be stacking against. But I mean,
it's shrinkage.
Jason Alexander, he's going to be primarily an opener here for this game. But if you look at Alexander's numbers overall, he is somebody who has an 18 ERA, also is 9.73 expected ERA for the year. You go back to some of his minor league numbers, those were terrible too. Listen to his 2023. He's bounced around different organizations in the minor leagues as well. Teams weren't even willing to hold on to him as a minor league pitcher. So he has had some success in the minor leagues this year. He has not had success in the big leagues, but 2023 with Milwaukee, 6.14 ERA, 4.45 FIP. In AAA the year before, 5.86 ERA and a 4.67 FIP. The last time he actually had any sort of significant appearances in the big leagues was 2022. He had, 18 appearances, 5.4 ERA, 5.49 expected ERA. I don't think this guy is any good at all. Despite the fact that he's pitched okay in, 70 innings in the minor leagues or something this year. There's a long track record of this guy being not good. He's also in his mid-30s. He's in his mid-30s and is now back to the big league level. I'm looking to stack against him.
Yep. I'm completely with you. I love the A's. I think this is a phenomenal spot. It's very difficult to imagine Jason Alexander, who, most familiar with his work in Seinfeld and Milwaukee. It's definitely a spot where anything that they could have as far as like other pieces coming in, because he went 2 1/3. I think he can go a lot longer than that if necessary. And you look at some of these other middle reliever options because you don't want to deal with the bullpen in general. I mean, we had Josh Hader, who wasn't available coming off of back-to-back holding it down, getting wins actually on Saturday, Sunday in extras. So Josh Hader ends up holding it down. He wasn't available for Monday. They end up rolling out Brian Abreu. Abreu gives up the bomb in extras, and that's all she wrote. But Abreu, he's still really good. King, Hader, Dubin, Okert is really good too. Like, you don't want to deal with that, but they're middle relievers. I can get down and target Sosa or some of the other guys that might be coming in, even though Sosa's had an unbelievable season as well. Like, I think you're really set up well. And Brandon Walter, now somebody that they're probably going to hold out and have be the fourth starter going forward for them. So you can take him off the board of somebody who's going to show up. You could be looking at a very thin Houston bullpen and one that's pretty taxed over the course of the last couple of days. They've played a lot of games into extras, and Dubin's pitched 2 of the last 3, or no, 2 consecutive for him. Hader 2 of the last 3. There's lots of ways where the Athletics are sitting in a really, really good spot.
Kurt, Dubin, King, and Abreu all pitched last night. Even though Gusto had a pretty good outing, he only pitched 5 innings, and then they went to all of their high leverage relievers. And like you said, they've also had to pitch in other games recently. So this is one of these spots where if Alexander struggles early, I just think it's a game where Houston might say, and once again, not saying this is the most likely outcome, but more saying it's within the realm of outcomes. If he struggles, then I think this just kind of becomes a spot of like, hey, let's just punt this game with our relievers. We don't want to burn more of our leverage guys, and we'll just live to fight another day. I think that is absolutely on the table if the Athletics go up by like 3-4 runs in this game, which if you're stacking them, it's kind of what you need to happen early anyway. So I like the Athletics quite a bit as a stack. I'm really surprised they're only 4% owned. That's who I'm playing in single entry today. And then I also think they're just woefully under-owned in large field tournaments. You see here getting to them in 13% of lineups as a 5-man stack in the Sims here. So I like the Athletics quite a bit for today. Let's see. Was there any other super chat? No, just the Malukar one about best stack in a single entry versus. I guess we kind of made fun of the question, but never actually gave an actual answer. Or at least you did. I didn't. It's still the Athletics for me.
Okay.
Still the Athletics for me for, I don't know. I don't know if there's other people involved here. If it's just a 1v1 versus EMAC, you can just play like the highest projected players for a 1v1. But in general, the Athletics for me. Who are the other stacks?
Fish anyway, you're fine.
Yeah. Either way, it's EMAC. Wait, you score like 20 points, you're good to go. You won the slate today. Just don't get negative from your pitcher, and you won the slate. What other stacks do you like for tonight?
Yeah, one that's really interesting to me. And obviously, hopefully this weather just continues to hold. I think the Cubs are really interesting. I bring up their speed all the time. We're finally getting an advantageous hitting environment in Wrigley. It has been 84 years since we've had one of those win games like we saw a month plus ago against Arizona. Wind's been blowing in there routinely. And this is one of the best offenses in baseball, bar none, just dominating the AL or the NL Central and just doing ridiculous things on the base paths. You get a fly ball pitcher in Chad Patrick taking on multiple fly ball hitters. You get Ian Happ back at the top of this lineup. The only issue you really have is how damn expensive they are. They are a very, very expensive stack to put together, but we've talked about a number of these like 6K guys to roll through. 7K range has a ton of pitchers available, especially Will Warren, who I think is the best play of the slate on at pitcher. I don't know what to tell you other than like the Cubs can put up 12 and have this over before it even begins. They can do that kind of stuff, and they have multiple ways of getting there from a fantasy perspective.
Okay. I don't have an issue with that. We've already touched on the Dodgers a little bit, but despite the price point, there isn't that much of an opportunity cost the high end. You can stack the Dodgers with Woo and with Will Warren as your pitchers. But Dodgers, I think that's a pretty good team to be looking at for today. Won't relitigate that one. But one other team that I also want to bring up, the Baltimore Orioles, going up against Zach Littell. Going back to what you and I were talking about once again about pitchers who are going to be facing regression going forward. We had Randy Vasquez as part of that group the other day. When you and I were talking about which pitchers are negative wins above replacement this year, who's been a below replacement level player as a pitcher this year, Zach Littell is one of them, even though he has a 3.64 ERA, because he has an 89% strand rate this year and a 253 BABIP, two things that are just not going to hold up going forward. So you've got a guy who does not generate really any swing and misses. The strikeout rate for Zach Littell is 16% this year.
Jesus.
The Baltimore Orioles, total disaster so far this year, but they're not all that expensive relative to the talent that they have. I like the matchup against Zach Littell. The ownership isn't all that significant for them either. We got the Baltimore Orioles 4% owned as a team. They're positively leveraging the top stacks tool. I like the Baltimore Orioles against Zach Littell in that little league ballpark that has super, super favorable hitting weather pretty frequently. So that's a team that I think the field is sleeping on a little bit.
Absolutely love. I'm with you. I mean, I'm on Ryan O'Hearn Homer. I think all the lefties look ridiculous again today. Now, the lefties did not look good yesterday. Brought up the splits multiple times for what you had with Ryan Pepio. Completely different situation with Zach Littell, that's for sure. But obviously, the prices have changed from a betting perspective because it is much more favorable to be facing Littell. Guess what doesn't change, Greg? Salaries all that much. They don't change that much game to game. So within a series, that is. So it's looking like a launching pad yet again here for Baltimore on a larger slate too. Should keep that ownership at bay. I'm very much here. Baltimore's my fourth highest owned stack. And I guess I should bring up my own Twins against Andrew Abbott, just because Andrew Abbott, he's not pulling any ownership, but like this is such a good ballpark. And we have such cheap hitters to rotate through for Minnesota. I'm looking at a lot of my Robbie Ray lineups and they have quite a bit of Twins kind of intermixed, not even necessarily all five mans, but Willie Castro is a lefty killer, absolute lefty killer. Love what we've seen from him. Ryan Jeffers, same deal. I think that they're kind of a nice contrarian cheap stack.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have any kind of issue with that. I got to some lineups in the Sims with them as well. Overweight to the field on them. One other thing I want to point out, kind of funny too. Tom Olson pointing out that all of the negative wins above replacement guys are pitching today. Brandon Pfaadt is one of the other ones that was part of that group. And I don't have an issue. Yeah, I don't have an issue going out and targeting him either because he's been a total disaster this year. 5.5 ERA, 7.22 expected ERA. Guy who was once a good pitching prospect, also was super successful in the big leagues last year. His strikeout rate is 17%. I was speculating, we were talking about him the other day, maybe he's somebody who's been tipping pitches because his fall off makes no sense to me. He is, and I mean, like, so last year, I get he to 4.71 ERA, but he does pitch in a pretty hitter-friendly environment, and he did a good underlying numbers with a 3.78 ERA and a 3.61 FIP. So looking at pitchers this year who I thought could have breakout seasons, Brandon Pfaadt, somebody I would have targeted as being, hey, here's a guy who, based on his underlying numbers, could break out this year. And it has gone so far the other way to the point where he has a 5.5 ERA, and the numbers are saying, oh, no, his ERA should actually be worse than that based on what the underlying metrics are. So I think that it makes sense to be stacking against him pretty much every time he pitches until something changes and there's some sort of improvements that he's made. And the Toronto Blue Jays are 3% owned against him.
Yeah, he got paid, Greg. When you get paid, some people get lazy. There's the people who go into another gear once they get paid because they feel like they need to deserve the money. And then there's the people who think they're entitled to the money. You want to hire the people who are going to work for the money. You want them on that pole dancing. You do not want them behind the bar taking shots with clients. That's a different conversation.
Yeah. So whatever it is that's going on with him, I don't know, but the numbers are so bad that I'm willing to just continually kind of blindly getting overweight to the field against him until something changes because the numbers are absolutely abysmal there when it comes to Brandon Pfaadt. Anything else you want to talk about as far as stacks go? Anything else that's important to you on the stacking side of things for DK?
We brought up the Dodgers already, Randy Vasquez. I mean, that's another one of those, put them in the Cubs bucket where they're expensive. It's not free to get there. It is surely not free, but I think it is very advantageous to be getting there. Brought up both of the game environments. I think Tampa Bay, even on the other side, what do you think about Dean Kramer? Like, he found some upside through kind of a different pitch mix last time out. I think Tampa Bay, though, in that ballpark with the lefties that you get in Aranda, the lefties you get with Brandon Lowe, Josh Lowe, Brandon Lau. It's just a ridiculous opportunity, I think, to get to just these game environments where maybe one goes nuclear.
I didn't really get to exposure on that side. No, I don't hate it or anything. It's just, it's 12 game slate, could only ultimately get exposure to so many spots. But I don't hate it or anything like that. We did also get a couple of questions from Discord that I want to hit on before we do our home run picks. So Einsteinium wants to know our thoughts on the Blue Jays. We touched on that. I didn't even see the question when we were talking about it, but yeah, I like stacking pretty much anybody against Brandon Pfaadt right now. You can make a case for it. The Mr. Cool Cam wants to know, what is our favorite contrarian stack for FanDuel, Eric? And keep in mind that for FanDuel, the Yankees are 8% owned, the Dodgers are 13% owned, the Astros 50%. Every other team is contrarian. So who do you like as a lower owned offense on the FanDuel side of things?
Yeah, just to kind of bring up what I don't like. I mean, I don't love the Yankees today against Hendricks. He's just kind of like the old guy. I described him as the old guy at the Y that just kind of like finds a way to be efficient. Isn't necessarily good, wouldn't be your first pick, but they're a functional pitcher and they find ways to just kind of survive. I think that's kind of what we're dealing with Kyle Hendricks here. I'm not in love with the stack by any means. I'm looking on FanDuel ownership. I'd say the Cubbies against Chad Patrick. Again, you're only getting up to 4 batters, but I think those 4 batters can be a mix and match of a number of different guys who do a number of different things. I mean, you get so much upside with the likes of Kyle Tucker, Pete Armstrong, Suzuki, Ian Happ, again, just been setting the world on fire. Dansby Swanson, shortstop, with a ton of fly ball tendencies as well. There's just so many ways that I think the Cubbies 1 through 8 basically have massive upside. Michael Busch. I love the Cubs on FanDuel at that ownership.
Sticking with the Athletics for me, I like them on FanDuel. I like them on DraftKings. They're a little bit more expensive on FanDuel, but it's not like 5% is problematic or anything like that. Still love the spot against Jason Alexander. By the way, funny point out by Steven Leibowitz. We also have Kramer on the slate. So we got Jason Alexander and Kramer. Interesting. No Seinfeld on the slate, but yeah, we've got some of the rest of the
no soup for you.
Yeah, there's no soup Nazi, but we've got Seinfeld well represented on tonight's slate. But yeah, Athletics against Jason Alexander relative to their ownership. That's my favorite team to be stacking, both FanDuel and DraftKings. I like the Athletics quite a bit for single entries. KJ in chat wants to know, is it the FanDuel stack tool? So let me go over to FanDuel. I had clicked on FanDuel, at least I thought I did. Yeah, this was FanDuel. Yeah, 5% ownership for the Athletics on FanDuel. Just made me double think myself if I had selected FanDuel versus DraftKings. But yeah, that was the FanDuel ownerships here. So see 15% Astros, 13% Dodgers from the field, and then you got the Yankees at 8% owned. Everything else is kind of contrarian on the FanDuel side of things. And looking at the final updated ownerships for DraftKings stacks, which, hey, really updated 13 seconds ago.
Love.
Let's see what we got. Astros 15% owned, Dodgers now 10%, Yankees 6%. There's a really big. Dodgers have come up in ownership a little bit as the day's gone on, which I think is warranted against Randy Vasquez. But yeah, the ownership really drops off on DraftKings once you get past the Astros and the Dodgers ownership. No other team more than 6% owned. And once again, A's my favorite team to be stacking, 4.8% owned over on DraftKings. Any final thoughts for the slate here, Eric? If not, we will do our home run picks.
Now let's get to it.
All right. So with that in mind, and also chat, we always like to hear from you guys. Let us know who you are picking to go yard today. Eric and I are going to be doing our dong picks, and then we're going to read off some of yours, and then we will be at lock. And if you haven't done it yet, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Eric, who are you picking to go yard today?
Yeah, there's lots of ways you could isolate a player here, a player there, and find interesting leverage on this slate. It's really hard to get away from something from Houston Athletics. So again, not leverage per se, but just finding your way onto more of these pieces. They're popular, and I think rightfully so. I'll just go more chalky. Lawrence Butler leading off there, 4,500. If you're playing cash today, him, Rooker. I mean, I think Lawrence Butler would just have to be a click no matter what. I mean, you're playing him, Ohtani, somebody else in that outfield. Lawrence Butler just looks redonkulous against Jason Alexander. Don't read into anything that you saw yesterday in a 1-game sample size. Regression towards the mean is coming, and in a good way this time around. That will not be a 3-1 ball game tonight.
I am going to be going with a different member of the Athletics, but still with the Athletics. I am going to be going with Brent Rooker as my home run pick. I think pretty much everybody on the A's looks like a decent pick to be going yard. Let's see what we've got from chat now. What does chat have for us? We've got, hey, look at that. Nicholas Robertson is picking Rooker and Butler. And I'm pretty sure, looking at the timestamp, he put that before either of us gave our picks. How about that? And that's the first one from chat. Interesting. Shout out. I love it right there.
You know things.
We've also got Jose Altuve from Sotax. Chad Wiseman is going with Jacob Wilson. Rooster Slinky is going with Kurtz. All A's being picked so far. We've got Matthew Cummings is going with Ohtani. We've got Nicholas Robertson also throwing in Gunnar Henderson. We've got Jackson Holiday from Devin Klein. We've got Ryan Schindler going with Ivan Herrera. We've got Julio Rodriguez from Steven Leibowitz. EMAC going with Rafael Devers in his first game with the San Francisco Giants. Malukar going with Logan O'Hop. We've got Magnum from Redkel 85. We've also got Brandon Lau from Ricardo Nelson. Matt Olson is the pick from Aaron Hines. Kurtz as well from Ken Ratty. Damani Tatum is, that's not a home run pick. Never mind. Matthew Cummings also has Mookie Betts. Michael Smith has got Aaron Judge. Barnaby O'Toole has got Soderstrom. Dre Nitty has got Rooker, Butler, and Altuve homers. Pac-Man Gaming is going with Ronald Acuna. By the way, Matthew Cummings, he every third home run pick is him adding in an extra name. He's picking half the league to homer today. He's just going with Nolan Arenado. DZ DeGreat has got Ohtani, Judge, and Turner. And that is going to wrap it up for us on home run picks. One more time, just want to double check to make sure there were no other questions that came to us in the Discord, which there are not. So once again, if you guys have not done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck with all your lineups tonight. If you guys don't win, well, if I don't win, I hope you guys do. I was going to say, if you guys don't win, I hope, but I'll prioritize myself before any of you guys there. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching. Good luck with your lineups tonight. And Eric and I will see you back here tomorrow. Peace.